Good morning, students. Let us continue the summit, the fourth unit prose. As my ice axe bit into the first steep slope of the ridge, my high hopes were realized. The snow was crystalline and firm. 2 or 3 blows of the ice axe produced a ship large enough even for our oversized high altitude boots, and a firm thrust of the ice axe would sink it halfway by the shaft, giving a solid and comfortable belay. As Hilary's ice axe bit into the first steep slope of the ridge, his high hopes were realized. The snow was crystalline and firm. 2 or 3 blows of ice axe could get them a ship large enough for their high altitude boots. We moved one at a time. I would cut a 40-foot line of strips, Tenzing belaying me while I worked. Then in turn, I would sink my shaft and put a few loops of the rope around it, and Tenzing, protected against a breaking strip, would move up to me. Then once again, as he belayed me, I would go on cutting. A firm thrust of ice axe would sink it halfway by the shaft, giving a solid and comfortable belay, egging the mountaineers to move on. Hilary would cut a 40-foot line of strips. Tenzing would belay Hilary while he worked. Hilary and Tenzing chained their roles, supporting one another. In a number of places, the overhanging ice cornices were very large indeed, and in order to escape them, I cut a line of strips down to where the snow met the rocks on the west. It was a great thrill to look straight down this enormous rock face and to see, 8,000 feet below us, the tiny tents of Camp 4 in the western CWM. Scrambling on the rocks and cutting handholds on the snow, we were able to shuffle past these difficult portions. On its east side was another great cornice, and running up the full 40 feet of the strip was a narrow crack between the cornice and the rock. Leaving Tenzing to belay me as best he could, I jammed my way into this crack. Then, kicking backwards, I sank the spikes of my crampons deep into the frozen snow behind me and levered myself off the ground. In a number of places, the overhanging ice cornices were very large. In order to escape them, Hilary cut a line of steps down to where the snow met the rocks on the west. It was a great thrill to look straight down the enormous rock face to see 8,000 feet below them the tiny tents of Camp 4 in the western CWM. Taking advantage of every little rock hold and all the force of knee, shoulder, and arms I could muster, I literally cramponed backwards of the crack, praying that the cornice would remain attached to the rock. My progress, although slow, was steady. As Tenzing paid out the rope, I inched my way upwards until I could reach over the top of the rock and drag myself out of the crack onto a wide ledge. For the first time, Hilary realized that nothing would prevent their chances of reaching Everest that day. Soon, Tenzing wriggled his way up and collapsed like a giant fish hauled up from the sea. For a few moments, I lay regaining my breath, and for the first time, really felt a fierce determination that nothing now could stop us reaching the top. I took a firm stance on the ledge and signaled to Tenzing to come on up. As I heaved hard on the rope, Tenzing wriggled his way up the crack and finally collapse at the top like a giant fish when it has just been hauled from the sea after a terrible struggle. Giant cornices loomed on the right. Steep rocks sloped on the left. As Hilary cut around the back of a hump, another came into the view. Time was passing. Ridge seemed to have no end at all. The ridge continued as before. Giant cornices on the right. Steep rocks sloped on the left. The ridge curved away to the right, and we had no idea where the top was. As I cut around the back of one hump, another higher one would swing into the view. Time was passing, and the ridge seemed never ending. Giant cornices loomed on the right. Steep rocks sloped on the left. As Hilary cut around the back of a hump, another came into the view. Time was passing. Ridge seemed to have no end at all. Our original jest had now quite gone, and it was turning more into a grim struggle. I then realized that the ridge ahead, instead of rising, now dropped sharply away. I looked upwards to see a narrow snow ridge running up to a snowy summit. A few more whacks of the ice axe in the firm snow, and we stood on top. The original jest in the conquest started diminishing. It was becoming a grim struggle. Then Hilary realized that the ridge ahead, instead of rising, now dropped sharply away. He looked upwards to see a narrow ridge running up to a snowy summit. A few more whacks of the ice axe in the firm snow. They stood on the top of the Everest. My first feelings were of relief. Relief that there were no more steps to cut, no more ridges to traverse, and no more humps to tantalize us with hopes of success. I looked at Tenzing. In spite of the balaclava helmet, goggles, and oxygen mask, all encrusted with long islets that concealed his face, there was no disguising his grin of delight as he looked all around him. We shook hands, and then Tenzing threw his arm around my shoulders, and we thumped each other on the back until we were almost breathless. It was 11:30 a.m. The ridge had taken us 2.5 hours, but it seemed like a lifetime. Both had a great sense of relief. There were no more steps to cut or ridges to traverse, and no more humps to lure them with the hope of success. In spite of the balaclava helmet, goggles, and oxygen mask, all covered with islets, he could not disguise his grin of delight. They shook hands. Tenzing threw his arms around Hilary. They thumped each other on their backs till they became breathless. To the east was our giant neighbor Makalu, unexplored and unclimbed. Far away across the clouds, the great bulk of Kanchenjunga loomed on the horizon. To the west, we could see the great unexplored ranges of Nepal stretching off into the distance. To the east of Everest, they saw their giant neighbor Makalu, unexplored and unclimbed. Far away, across the clouds, the great bulk of Kanchenjunga loomed on the horizon. To the west, they could see the great unexplored ranges of Nepal stretching off into the distance. The most important photograph I felt was a shot on the North Ridge showing the North Pole, an old route which had been made famous by the struggles of those great climbers of the 1920s and 1930s. After 10 minutes, I realized that I was becoming rather clumsy-fingered and slow-moving, so I quickly replaced my oxygen set. The most important photo was shot down the North Ridge. It showed the North Pole and the old route which had been made famous by the struggles of those great climbers of 1920s and 1930s. Meanwhile, Tenzing had made a little hole in the snow, and in it he placed various small articles of food, a bar of chocolate, a packet of biscuits, and a handful of lollies. Small offerings, indeed, but at least a token gift to the gods that all devout Buddhists believe have their home on the lofty summit. Devout Buddhists believe that gods have their home on the whole lofty summit. Hence, they wish to offer at least a token of gift. Tenzing dug a little hole in the snow, and in it he placed a bar of chocolate, a packet of biscuits, and a handful of lollies. While we were together on the South Pole 2 days before, Colonel Hunt had given me a small crucifix which he had asked me to take to the top. I, too, made a hole in the snow and placed a crucifix beside Tenzing's gifts. Hilary had a small crucifix from Colonel Hunt. He had asked Hilary to offer it to the gods when they reached the top. Hilary also made a small hole in the snow and placed a small crucifix beside Tenzing's gifts piously. After 15 minutes, I moved down off the summit onto the steps. Wasting no time, we campaigned along our tracks, spurred by the urgency of diminishing oxygen. We scrambled cautiously over the rock traverse, moved one at a time over shaky snow sections, and finally campaigned upon our steps and back onto the south peak. They scrambled carefully over the rock traverse, moved one at a time over shaky snow sections, and finally campaigned upon their steps and back onto the south peak. We were now very tired, but moved down to the 2 reserve cylinders on the ridge. As we were only a short distance from camp and a few liters of oxygen left in our own bottles, we carried the extra cylinders down and reached our tent on its crazy platform at 2 p.m. With a last look at the camp that had served us so well, we turned downwards with dragging feet and set ourselves to the task of safely descending the ridge to the south pole. They reached their tent at 2 in the afternoon. They turned downwards, then safely climbed down the ridge towards the south pole. The time passed as in a dream. 2 figures came towards us and met us a couple of 100 feet above the camp. They were George Lowe and Wilfred Noyes, laden with hot soup and emergency oxygen. Just short of the tent, my oxygen ran out. We had enough to do the job, but by no means too much. We crawled into the tent and with a sigh of delight, collapsed into our sleeping bags, while tents flapped and shook under the perpetual south cold gale. 2 figures came towards them a couple of 100 feet above their camp. They were George Lowe and Wilfred Noyes, and it was thoughtful of them because Hilary's oxygen ran out just then. John Hunt, who led the expedition, said it was an unforgettable day. They had climbed to the top. There were shouts of joy, handshakes, and hugs for the 2 heroes. Their happiness and pride showed how these men had shared in the achievement that was brilliantly concluded by Tenzing and Hilary. The adventure was over. The story of the ascent of Everest is one of the comradeship and teamwork, formed through dangers and difficulties, met and overcome together. Perhaps after the climbing of this great mountain, others will find their own Everests, for there are still many opportunities for adventure. Some are close at hand, others are far away in distant lands. Not all adventures are exciting, nor is adventure to be found only upon a mountain. There are Everests to be climbed in our everyday life. Given the selflessness and resolve which enabled men to climb Everest, there is no height, no depth that the spirit of man guided by a higher spirit cannot attain. Not all the adventures are exciting. Adventures are not to be found only upon the mountains. In everyday life, there are Everests to be climbed in every walk of life. Man can conquer any height or depth if he persists with his undaunted spirit guided by a higher spirit. It was an unforgettable day for them. They had climbed to the top. There were shouts of joy, handshakes, and hugs for the two heroes. The adventure was over.